Hello, Dawn Moore. I received a request this week to address the situation where an unrepresented buyer chooses to make an offer on one of your listings. What are your options as to representation of that buyer? Well, you actually have a couple of options. The first is to enter into a buyer's representation agreement which allows intermediary, and once that agreement is executed, you can facilitate the negotiations for the contract on that piece of property for both the buyer and the seller. But what if your buyer refuses to sign a buyer's representation agreement but still wants you to act as an intermediary on their behalf for that particular piece of property? Then either you have to have some separate written agreement that carries the statutory language for intermediary for the buyer to agree to in writing, or I suggest you sign a limited buyer's representation agreement which contains that language and limit that buyer's representation agreement to only that specific property. Once that is executed, then you can facilitate the negotiations for that property between the buyer and seller. But what if the buyer doesn't want you to act as an intermediary at all? Then I highly recommend that you get some written acknowledgement from the buyer that you do not represent the buyer. It is important to remember that you can create an agency relationship by your actions, and as a result incur all the fiduciary duties and liabilities that go along with acting as an agent for a third party. All you have to do is act like you're representing someone, and for that someone to rely on those actions. Therefore, when an unrepresented buyer refuses intermediary, I highly recommend you get an acknowledgement from that buyer that you do not represent that buyer. This can be either in a separate written acknowledgement or could be a disclosure in special provisions of the contract. As you go out there and do your day-to-day real estate practice, I hope this tip will come in handy. Allegiance Title is your resource for results, and I look forward to seeing you at the closing table. Thank you.